Hi everyone, this is Mike Mooney with the Steel Studio, and today we're going to be analyzing the Sam Ehlinger Pro Day. If you didn't know who he is, he's a pretty good QB coming out of UT, where he was relatively successful. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, and he actually broke his high school's records that were previously held by Nick Foles and Drew Brees at that school, so obviously a pretty impressive background. I think his Pro Day was more important than a lot of other quarterbacks, and more important than a lot of people realize, because he really needs to be able to show what he can do. He's been overshadowed quite a bit by Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Kyle Trask. But with that being said, let's get into analyzing his throws. Some of his initial passes, they seem high and loose. Some of them seem like they're lobs in the air. Not really a tight spiral, not a lot of zip. His body movement's pretty good. His footwork seems solid. Looks like he got a stable stance, and he is throwing off the right feet most of the time. Sometimes you're seeing him lean back and throw off his back foot, which is relatively improper. But for the most part, he's throwing off his front foot and leading into the throw. On the slant routes, they look really low. There's a tight spiral on some, but they're low and slow. I think that these would definitely be batted down at the line of scrimmage, if it was even possible for a throw like this to get off the line of scrimmage. This needs to be an 8 to 10 foot toss at its peak. It's likely 6 feet here at the most, from what I can tell. It would definitely get picked off if not batted down, and his stance coming out of it seems relatively weak. As we move into these out routes, from a speed perspective, they seem relatively average. Some of these tosses are lobs, which isn't really great. Some of these are pretty good passes, though. I'm seeing some good arch on some of them, decent height, decent speed, and ball placement isn't bad or anything like that. I expect him to come into Pro Day looking a lot stronger, though, physically speaking. I'm not sure what his exercise routine is, obviously, but I expected a little more physical strength, and that was somewhere that it was pretty evident that he needed to improve, and it doesn't seem like he did. But as he got warmed up here, it seemed like a lot of his tosses seemed a little more keyed in, a little more accurate, and these deep outs tend to start showing a little bit of strength for him. As we move towards the in routes during the Pro Day, it seems like the tosses started to slow down again. His posture was average and not that great. The ball placement wasn't very good, and it seemed like he kind of cooled back down and, lost his rhythm for a little bit there. On some of these deeper routes, it seems like the receivers had to slow down quite a bit to be able to catch the ball. His ball placement, again, isn't the best. Some of them are pretty good. This toss towards the bleachers, this one kills me. Hopefully someone picks up that receiver, because that guy can obviously take a hit, taking one from the bleachers directly on the shin, but not great ball placement again, and he let his receiver out way too far. He's pretty good and looks pretty accurate throwing in the seam. I feel pretty good watching him here, and his tosses seemed comfortable. Some are a little high, but overall more comfortable here than elsewhere. But it seems like we continue to see recurring patterns here through the remainder of his Pro Day. Some slow ball placement, some lower passes, forcing deep passes inside because he can't get them to make it the distance. He's making receivers slowly come back to the ball because he's holding it just a second too long. A lot of recurring patterns. I think he looked a lot better during the season than he does here. He had way more zip in his passes during the games, and that may be what matters. Pro Day may not matter as much, but this was really his opportunity to show that he's gotten stronger and that he can throw accurately, and it just didn't seem that way. Overall, he did pretty good. I'm not taking that away from him. I just think that he could have come into this a little bit better. I was optimistic about him as a player before this Pro Day, but I definitely think he'll spend some time in the NFL without a doubt. Likely a third stringer to start at the minimum, spending some time on the practice squad. But I think he'll spend some time in the NFL. If he can get stronger, then I believe most of his problems end up being resolved, honestly. He just needs some speed and some zip in his tosses with some aggression in his placement. Everything else seems stable and good. His posture's good. His movement's a little robotic, but overall I think he's pretty good. And I think he had a decent Pro Day.